you, everyone. This is the last presentation of the morning. I hope to be brief and easy. Actually, the aim of my presentation is to tell you who I am and where I come from, what I'm actually doing, and the way I do it, and hope to be brief about that. So, let's start. Can I do it? So, my background, who I am. I'm an economist, as you all know. I'm Italian. I got my degree in the University of Trieste, and then I moved to Spain. Over there, I did my PhD in applied economics, and then I started working for a couple of universities over there, which is a business school, basically, and the Nebrija University. And then, who I am at the moment, I'm employed at TAIAS, and I work with Kia, Martin, and the team of economists over there. A little bit more about my background. I have a PhD, I do, as I said, in applied economics. I used to study different things. I used to be a sort of studying international economics. Actually, my PhD was about services activities, services like can be medical services, commercial services, etc. And the way they internationalize the cross borders, which is pretty different from the way that goods cross borders and goods production cross borders. And I enjoyed a lot that phase of my life. I did different studies on the analytical frameworks and this internationalization process takes place. And then I studied real exchange rates, and I made some implication of the public policies about that. That was the time of the Bolkestein directive, which was really at the center of attention. So that is my past. Well, part of my past. Then I started working as a postdoc first before coming here at IESC, which is a business school based in Spain. And there is where I started working on jobs on the labor market, on the labor economics. Basically, I started working on the long-term care services, which are some services that do have to face and figure out how to tackle the demographic pressure. Those are the services that are taking care of the aging and senior citizens. And that was where I first started studying with micro data. All my previous job was about macro data, about international flows of capitals and services. And then I started talking about and working with micro data. And indeed, the labor force survey that we mentioned several times today, that was pretty interesting. There's still a lot to say about this sector. And then I also was involved in a project that is studying the dynamics of jobs in Spain. We have a large data set provided by a company. They do pay slip for up to 3 million people in Spain every month, and they know a lot about hiring. They know every hiring of these 3 million people. They know the company sizes, how they move around, and so this is a project that I'm still dedicating a short amount of my time, and we are building an indicators of the dynamics that is made basically by the difference between the hiring and separation that are in the economy and the actual growth of the sizes of the companies. And all that is in the between is a sort of churning that is going on between workers, and it's a measure of the dynamics of the market, and we are doing that. I spent some of my time on that, just a short amount of time. I was supposed to be there 10%, 90% here, 10% there, but actually I'm 90% here and 20% there. So I have no. It's a joke. Only she got there. Then came Eduworks, that we all know. How an economist, what do I do here? Well, the general goal of all the economist team here is to go into this, to the hampering of the, to in detail in what's hampering a well-functioning of the labor market. But more in detail, what I do in Eduworks. Well, my plan is staying here for a couple of years and probably researching 3 directions. And here I present them to you. The first direction is a research about a skill mismatch for migrant workers. This is already in an advanced stage. And I will talk about this a little bit more in detail in the next slide. The second branch of my research at IAS will be working on the similarities and dissimilarities of occupations. So here we will make use of, well, in all my research we will make use of the wage indicator. I will go back to that too in a moment. But in the second branch, what we have is that in this big, large survey, we have a respondent who every time that they say, for example, my job is mathematician, then Windows opens to them, and they are asked to give a weight, to several tasks that normally mathematicians are supposed to be doing. So we have a large amount of data on tasks within occupations. And we are trying to figure out what will be the highest value to those data. In particular, what we are thinking is that if we know we have thousands of respondents, mathematicians, for example, that are responding and telling us what are the tasks that they perform daily on their job, what we can measure is that is actually the definition of mathematician consistent? Is the occupation definition that are at the base, the ISCO occupations, consistent within themselves? What we actually expect is that we can classify occupation on the base of the consistency of the task that they do perform. And at the same time, we can answer another question by the means of this data, is that not only how consistent are occupation, but is a mathematician doing the same in the Netherlands, in Poland, or in Europe, or elsewhere in Europe? So these are 2 basic questions that we want to answer in the next paper. And the third question could be still about the task, still about occupation, is that how close are different occupations within each other? How close is the work of a mathematician to a work of a statistician in terms of tasks that are performed? So that will be the point. That can make it can be considered as also sort of evaluation of this occupational structure that is to economists is sort of given. It's up button in the sense that we are given definitions of occupation based on the work of the past work of several economists. But maybe with this task approach, we could somehow propose a more bottom-up, and that maybe that will fit better the labor market. And then the third work that I'm thinking that we are thinking about doing is still on task, but it will mix with the vacancy skills that firms state that they need. This is what Kea explained it a little bit better yesterday afternoon at the beginning of our session. And that will be, I guess, the third branch, but we are still thinking about this paper. So, few more words about the first, this skill mismatch for migrant workers paper that, as I told you, is already in a pretty advanced stage. This is a work that I'm doing with Kia and Martin. And what actually we do is we focus on over-education, that maybe we can go into detail how we measure that, and in particular of over-education of migrant workers who are seen in literature are to be more exposed to the possibility of being over-educated in their job. Actually, the question that we wanted to answer there is if our over-education is more common among migrants compared to domestic workers, if is the over-education incidence alike across different kind of migrants, because to be migrant is not a single particular condition. There is a difference between being an Italian in the Netherlands, being an Italian in South Africa, or being Polish in the UK. So being migrant can mean different things. And this is where we go a little bit into detail. And also we explore, I will go fast on this, but also we explore if the theoretical reasons that are behind, there are thought in literature to be behind over-education, are the same they hold for the migrant condition as well as they hold for the local worker or for the domestic workers. So just a few slides about some of the results. I don't put regression outcomes here. No, first, the wage indicator. We have been saying this word more and more during these 2 days, so I guess that we should all know, at least being on the same page. This is of what this wage indicator data set is. Wage indicator is a survey that is conducted over tens of countries, and we have a direct access to this survey. It's really a mine. If you are all thinking about where can I get data, individual data, this is one of the greatest mine you could have an easy access to. For example, in the case of our paper, we just had a use of a small sample of the whole data set, but it already included 7,000 individuals for a period of over 5 years. So if you really are struggling with labor force survey data, this is pretty similar, and well, you already know which door to knock. So, for example, just an example of what we did about this over-education. We measured over-education in different countries, and we group per country intercontinent. For example, this is the over-education incidence for the European Union 15 countries, for Eastern European countries, for Africa, Central and South America, Asia, North America, and the European countries that are not part of the EU. Normally, over-education, and this is self-assessed over-education, we choose this measure because we try different, in literature there are different measures of over-education, and it seems that one of the most reliable, one of the most accepted over-education measure is indeed the self-assessed over-education. We also try to build up some measures. Maybe then in the discussion we can go more into detail for that, but according to the self-assessed, you can see that there are over-education is about 20% of jobs, a little bit more in some continents, up to more than 30 for the European, not EU countries. So this is the general over-education incidence. But we wanted to see, are migrants more educated than domestic workers? And what happened is that in some continents, it seems that migrants' incidence of over-education is higher than the domestic workers. And this is the case for Europe, for example. But when you go to Africa, for example, you can see that migrants are less over-educated. So this makes a difference. And this is easily understandable why. It's not the same being an Eastern European, as I told you, and going to the UK, or the other way around. So since I have very few time, we also did this not only for migrants in countries, but for where did you came from? For example, this is a domestic worker, this is an immigrant from another EU 15 country, this is an Eastern European immigrant. And we could find out some patterns behind this, and we don't have that much time, but you can read the paper and find out what are our main results. About some few words about methods. This is a presentation of myself. What actually, how do I face problems? How do I tackle them? Well, as an economist, I've been educated to face problems in this way, and I want to say applying statistical and econometric techniques to extract information out of the data. This is what economists normally, applied economists normally do. Then there are theoretical economists who are much more intelligent, and they do also the theories behind that. What do I mean by this? Basically, we first normally do exploratory analysis, which is, in my opinion, underrated in the academia, because it's a part of the analysis where you really extract a lot of information out of that, and you can really make a sense out of that. But it's not only about exploratory analysis. We also concentrate a lot of what are the tools, the normal tools that are taught to economists in the academia. But what I'm also personally interested in is that, and one of the reasons that I really like this project is that I'm also interested in techniques that are facing the problem of approaching large data sets, and those techniques are more they are normally developed under computer science, and this is where I'm interested in learning a lot from those of you who are applying, for example, machine learning, classification, clustering, and all those techniques. So, well, I prepared another short diapo on this on tools, but okay, we can skip the discussion of this. And that's it. That's me. Thank you.
Questions? Before questions, regarding the WageIndicator, WageIndicator is an associated partner, so the data set is available for everyone in this report. Question? Maria.
Thank you for your presentation, and I have like a small question, like because you're gonna compare like overqualification, for example, among like migrants in different countries, right?
Yeah.
I wonder, like, are there like also institutional factors, for example, like the recognition of like I don't know, titles and different skills, like how much do you think this is like actually, how much of the effect do you think is driven by this maybe institutional like differences, like variation even within like the EU, or you know?
Yeah. Indeed, we are. This is one of the theoretical reasons. I didn't talk, but we have, thanks to the work of Kay and Martin, we have a pretty solid background on the theory and that are supposed to affect our education. And one of the theory we test in the paper is indeed this one. It's pretty hard to find some variable that can proxy what you say. We use a variable that is the language sharing the same language, which is somehow not exactly institutional proxy, but it's somehow a cultural proxy that, and indeed it's relevant in our model. It's significant and has a direct effect on our education. Institutional, I don't remember if you put something specific for institutions. In some of the regression we did is we mix the effect, and we take into consideration the combination of the country of origin and the country of destination, and this is somehow taking into consideration that I can tell you that a lot of this combination are indeed significant.
And we did also control for the year that they entered the country of destination, and depending on that year, whether they took their education in the country of origin or in the country of destination, wasn't that?
We used that, then it's not in the final version. I don't remember why maybe there was lack of data on that. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. It was really interesting and informative. I have a question and a comment. Question: are you investigating, are you comparing over education or over qualification? I think there's a bit of a difference. And then I'm thinking the graph you showed with comparison between natives and migrants across all continents, Europe, Asia, Africa. I was thinking about the Africa, where migrants turned out to be not as over-educated or over-qualified as in Europe or the US. Is it perhaps because it's the type of migration that's going on in Africa? It's the South-South migration, so people are predominantly low skilled, so the higher skilled go to Europe or the US, and within Africa or within Asia they go for the lower skills, so they will be probably to be
you're indeed.
qualified. And then I'm thinking, would it be a better measure over qualification and not over education? And then you'll have to kind of differentiate between highly skilled and lower skilled.
And just to add on this, asylum seekers are part of migrants or not?
Sorry?
Asylum seekers. Asylum
Ah,
seekers. Are they part of this group or not?
Yeah, they are.
They are.
Yeah, they are
Because-
migrants. As migrant here are defined as people who are not born in the country they answer the survey.
Sorry, can I just, because it's related, okay,
Yeah.
so my question was exactly the same on my comment. I think there is something to do with terminology you need. Over education is not clear, and to me there is something that has to do with qualification, which is a formal curricular, if you like, or educational matter, and how countries organize the educational systems and what they what qualifications they avoid in relation to different things, and that to me has nothing to do with what someone knows or he or she doesn't know to a certain level, okay? So you cannot assume that a master's in one country is the same as a master's in another country, and that's only a piece of paper, right? And the other thing now that Gabor mentioned, to me there would be a huge difference between a migrant and an asylum seeker. Because if you look at asylum seekers, often they're people that are very highly qualified and very educated and actually persecuted in their countries because of their qualification and their ideas and so forth, right? So probably they would not be representative of the South-South kind of uneducated, unqualified type of migration.
Okay.
Just can this last point and the other points I leave to Stefano. We looked a bit closer also for other projects to what happens in Africa. This is only for a very small part low skilled. There is major also because of there is kind of bias in WageIndicator, that's to one extent higher educated and the more of course internet prone population workforce. But in Africa it's especially a large kind of brain drain first from countries like Mozambique, Angola and so on to South Africa, especially in healthcare. And they are rather overrepresented in our data set, and this is part of the effect also for Africa, which is quite high. And then often they go further to UK, the US, but the initial effect of the, let's say, especially healthcare population, healthcare educated is quite serious in this African story. So, but that's a part of the story. But sorry.
Sorry about the can I?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
Then Christian and then lunch.
Okay. So about the over-education and over-qualification, you are definitely right to point that. In this presentation, I treated as the same phenomenon. Why? Because this is a sort of an empirical based analysis in which we indeed measure over-qualification. I said over-education, one might think about over-education as years of schooling, requested years of schooling as weighted against the actual years of schooling. What we measure here is self-assessed over-qualification, and it's actually thought to be a very reliable measure because it takes into consideration this. It takes into consideration someone who is doing the job, knows exactly what the job consists in, and it's asked, are you more than qualified to do this job. Maybe you have a driving license and you are just moving bottles from here to here. They say, yeah, maybe I'm overqualified because I studied to have my driving license and I'm just doing this. So this is one of the reasons why, okay, theoretically we can really speculate a lot, but we want to go into the data, and we found out that self-assessed is good in these terms, because maybe someone is thinking about years of education, someone is thinking about tasks, but the people are asked indeed if they can do more than what they are actually doing. This is why we like that measure. We try to also do to measure years of educations, and we divided the population in 480 occupational distinct occupations, and we measured the years of schooling and the medium and the average years of schooling in each occupation, and we saw how many were, what was the percentage of people who were like standard deviation higher in years of schooling, and that measure doesn't actually fit with this self-assessed measure, and indeed actually is not so much related what we are expected to find, like, or on the characteristic that we expect to be related with this over-education or over.
Sorry, Father, I promised this to Christian, and we are over time.
I don't know if I answered this. Yeah.
Okay, I have a whole different type of question.
Yeah.
As a postdoc, you have a whole different level of power and expertise, and you walked different ways in different directions already in your career.
Mm.
So you also could be some kind of, I would not say an idol, but you are a person which could move a topic inside of the network. So if you could choose a second topic, which is like a general topic which you would coordinate, and you could put together a team which is built from topics, which would it be? So,
if I could choose a second topic within the Eduworks,
yes. How to work, and you could put together a team to coordinate it. I know it's a hard question, but we are bringing together a lot of disciplines.
Yeah.
I think it's a big chance.
As I told you, my background is economist, and I do like these large data set approaches that are made in computer science. So my instinct will be to go in that direction. We have very large data sets here available, and people who have this knowledge of tools, and of course all the questions that Gabor has put in his PowerPoint. So my idea, if I was free to do that, it will be like that, to have a small team of computer scientists and some economists collaborating in order to extract information first from the large data set, and to see if this information fits some of the questions that we have about this mismatch between supply and demand in the labor markets.
We were searching of a person heading the end user group of the dashboard. So we got the answer.
Something like that.
If you offer a better salary than Ayas,
No, there is no extra salaries.
so,
Project inside project.
Yeah.
It's also an interesting project for a future secondment. So how to
Yes.
work actively. Thank you, Stefano, and